This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Haba and welcome everyone. We have an amazing subject tonight, Parshas Sisa, and just some public service announcements. First of all the Shiur on Sefer Shemais are sponsored by Dr. Zakheim Umeshpachta, Leila Nishmas from Shloime Eliezer ben Harav Yaakov Zakheim, and Leila Nishmas from Mother Rivka Bas Tuvia Halevi. The Neshama should have an Aliyah, be Melitza Yisham for their whole family, is at Biasko Tzedek. Tonight's class is dedicated by Yedidi Rabbi Yitzchak Yeager, the Chashav of Marbitz Torah and author of the Svarim Guidelines, in honor of his father's 6th yard site, Rav Elisha Meir ben Rav Alexander Zusha, Yud Ches Adar Rishon, Shabbos Parshas Sisa. Tonight's year is also sponsored anonymously, Leila Nishmas, Harav Tzvi Harish ben Harav Aaron Shmuel Kadenover. Zecher Tzaddik V'Bracha, the Kav HaYashar, whose yard site is today. The Sefer, what is it called? The Concealed and Revealed. It's going to print very soon, imminently. I was editing it today, and I learned a piece of the Kav HaYashar today. Okay, very good. Tonight's shir is also sponsored by the wife of Reb Perach Mendel, that he may continue to have success and thrive in all of his endeavors. May he have much thriving and hatzlacha. And also tonight's shir is sponsored anonymously by somebody who chooses to remain anonymous. Okay, a few other public service announcements. So I know everybody's getting very excited about the upcoming Sefer in English, the Concealed and the Revealed, but don't forget about the Sefer in Lashon Kodesh, which you could order on our site with free delivery, rabbidg.com. And you need to have both, because there are pieces in the Lashon Kodesh that are not in the English, and vice versa, obviously. Otherwise, how could And a few other public service announcements. First of all, we're learning Mishnah Yomis. If anybody wants to join us, we learn 2 Mishnayos today. You could join our WhatsApp groups. You could go to our site, rabbidg.com. I believe we're finishing Peah very soon, and we start Demai over sometime this weekend. Also, we're finishing, after 6 years, Mishnah Berurah. Been learning a page a day, so we're finishing Mishnah Berurah. And here's the good news. We're starting a new type of learning of Mishnah Berurah. Instead of doing a page a day, we're going to be doing a daf a week, like the daf HaShavua, similar to daf HaShavua. A little bit slower. We're going to do a full blot a week. Instead of 2.5 blot a week, 1 blot a week. Do it a little slower, a little bit more thorough. You could check out all the details on our site. Okay, Parshas Sisa. Now tonight's shir has in it not only halacha and hashkafa, a few amazing adventures, and it starts in Turkey, it ends in Eretz Yisrael, but it's something that affects us all the time. We start with the comments of the Agadas Eliyahu. The Agadas Eliyahu was written by Rabbi Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir, the Baal Shevet Musar, who was a darshan and preacher in Izmir. He wrote many, many svarim. He wrote the Shevet Musar, Agadas Eliyahu, Minchas Eliyahu. He wrote a parish on the Pirkei Rabbi Lezer called V'loi Oid Ella. V'loi Oid Ella. And I believe he was Ashkenazi. My wife is a descendant of Rabbi Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir. Anyway, he says like this. Chazal tell us about the Luchos Rishonos. We know the Luchos Rishonos were broken. Why were the Luchos Rishonos broken? Because they were given with great pomp and ceremony and great fanfare. It was like a thunder and lightning show. It was a very public spectacle. And therefore, Ayin Harah was shoylet over it. And therefore, the Luchos Rishonos were broken. However, Luchos Shniyos were given bechashay, secretly, hidden. Hashem told Moshe, "V'ish lo ya'aleh imach v'gam ish al yeira b'chol hahar gamatz." Even the sheep couldn't watch. Even the sheep couldn't look. So, because it was given, it was delivered secretly and discreetly. Therefore, it was sustained. It was viable. So, in other words, Chazal tell us that the Luchos Rishonos were broken because it was very public. Ask Rabbi Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir, wait a second, the Torah is subject to Ayin Harah? Doesn't the Gemara say in Brachos and Daf Chaf that Yosef, because his eye was not neneh from the Avera of Eshes Potifera, Ayin Harah was not shoyled on Yosef. Ayin Harah was not shoyled on Yosef because Yosef did not allow his eye to be neneh from an Avera. So if someone who observes the Torah is not subject to Ayin Harah, then certainly the Torah itself is not subject to Ayin Harah. If someone who keeps the Torah can't be harmed by Ayin Harah, certainly the Torah itself. So how could the Torah be broken because of Ayin Harah? But so even someone who keeps the Torah is not subject to Ayin Harah, certainly the Torah itself. So says Eliyahu kind of Izmir, you could say that the Ayin Harah was never shoyled on the letters of the Torah. Chazal say, what happened to the letters of the Torah when Moshe broke the Luchos? They flew off. So they were preserved, they were maintained, they weren't harmed. The stone, which is not the Torah, just what the Torah was written on, the stone was broken. So Ayin Harah wasn't shoyled on the Torah. Ayin Harah made it that the document that the Torah was written on was harmed. But still, as Rabbi Yaakov of Izmir, in the end of the day, soif, that's like Ayin Harah's being shoyled on the Torah. Because if Ayin Harah caused the letters of the Torah to fly off of the item that the Torah was written on, isn't that called Ayin Harah having an effect on the Torah itself? And he says, V'tzarach Yishuv, it needs an answer. How could it be that the Torah itself is subject to Ayin Harah? So what we want to speak about this evening is this subject. Is it possible that a person could be involved in learning Torah, the Varmsha Kedusha, and still be subject to Ayin Harah? So, the Rebbeinu Shalom led me in the way of an interesting sefer. It's very hard to read the sefer because it was never reprinted. I have a friend in Brooklyn he's reprinting all the Sramar of Chaim Falaji, but this, I guess, is on the list. Shalos Teshuvas Leiv Chaim. Now, I'll tell you a little story. This you can't make up. Maybe you could. No. This is unbelievable. So we were in Izmir not so long ago, at the end of December, I think. And one of the landmark locations, we were going to the kever of Chaim Falaji. It turns out that it was the yard site of the son of Reb Chaim Falaji, Reb Avram Falaji. Fine. While there, I learned that Reb Chaim Falaji had other children. He had Reb Nissim Yitzchak Falaji. And we were walking around the cemetery. I was with my good friends, Shlomi Kol and Yanki Baelish. We were looking around, and we saw a grave. It was covered in weeds. It was covered in dirt. We cleaned it off. We ripped off the weeds. It was the son of Reb Chaim Falaji, Reb Yosef Falaji. And it says he wrote certain Svarim, Yosef Tehillos. I'll tell you the truth. There's a site called TorahAnytime.com. You ever hear of it? Go on the site, check out Journey to Izmir, the kever of Reb Yosef Falaji, and you'll see we're cleaning it off. And it was a 30-second clip because I didn't know anything about Reb Yosef Falaji, but I figured, we got to capture this. So for 30 seconds I said, he was a Rav in Izmir, he's the son of Reb Chaim Falaji, and I read what it said, he's fine. I don't know anything else about him. I'm preparing, I came back from Eretz Yisrael, I need a subject for Parshas Sisa. So I will go to Shalos Teshuvas Leiv Chaim, Reb Chaim Falaji. He's saying, you know what? For this subject, I'm just going to tell you the opinion of my son. And he copies over a tshuva of Rabbi Yosef Falaji. So tonight's whole shiur comes from the Chedushim of Rabbi Yosef Falaji. I don't know, maybe we cleaned it up. So he said, okay, Yasher Kayach, here's a good Wednesday night shiur. So this is Shalos Teshuvas Leiv Chaim, Reb Chaim Falaji. It's a good one, Reb Shaga, right? It's Reb Chaim Falaji quoting his son, Reb Yosef Falaji. Here's the Shaila. Anyone here a Baal Tekeah? Baal Makri? Baal Lashon Hara? No. Anyone? We could be a Baal Shachris, a Baal Musaf, but there's some people, they're like jack of all trades, and they could do everything, So here's the story. There's a shul, under-equipped, and there's one guy, he's a Baal Musaf, and he's the only guy, or one of the only people who could blow shofar. Can the Baal Musaf on Rosh Hashanah blow shofar? So one chashash in halacha is, if he's going to blow shofar, he's going to get far blanchet, he's going to get all confused, and he's not going to remember where he's going to blow shofar, and then he's going to start saying, Shoshanas Yaakov Tzahal v'Samecha. So we say, better to get someone else to be the Baal Toikeya than the Baal Musaf himself. But says Rabbi Yosef Falaji, in my opinion, even if the guy has a siddur, because nowadays we say if you have a siddur, we're not worried you're going to get confused, the Baal Musaf cannot blow the shofar. Why not? Even if he's a good Baal Toikeya, and he's an expert Baal Toikeya, and he's a great Baal Musaf. You know why? Because everybody's going to go, whoa, wow, look at this guy. He could musaf, he could blow shofar. Next thing we know, he's going to be juggling, he's going to be, giving a drush. The guy could do everything. It's going to draw unwanted attention. People are going to ooh and ah, and it's going to create Ayin Harah, especially from a rabbim, and it's going to cause him danger, and he's going to be besakana, and therefore we cannot allow him to do that. And don't say, well, he's doing a mitzvah, so it's going to protect him. No. Mitzvah, shmitzvah, it doesn't matter what he's doing. If he's doing something that's going to draw attention to himself, the mitzvah is not going to protect him, because, as we know, even the giving of the Torah did not protect the Torah from Ayin Harah. It was a major public spectacle. There's nothing more important than the giving of the Torah. Nevertheless, it was subject to Ayin Harah. Says Rabbi Yosef Falaji, look in the Chidushim of my father, Reb Chaim, in the Sefer Nefesh Chaim, that when it comes to the performance of a mitzvah, Ayin Harah is still a factor, and we do not apply Shomer Mitzvah Lo Yeda Davara when you're doing a mitzvah against Ayin Harah. You might not, other dangers you may be protected from, but not Ayin Harah. And then Rabbi Yosef Falaji says, don't you remember what happened here in Izmir? There was a guy, he was 40 years old, he was in the peak of his strength, he had a voice like Pavarotti, he blew the shofar like the Kohen Gadol, and he davened Shachris, and he was the Baal Koirei, and he was the Baal Musaf, and he was the Baal Toikeya, and everybody is, wow, the guy, he davened, he had a booming voice, and he blew shofar. They thought, it was the shofar of Tchias HaMesim. And from that Rosh Hashanah on, he became very weak, and he can no longer stand in front of the Amud and daven, and he passed away. And everybody said, it's because of Ayin Harah. Don't do too many things. What, you mean he's doing everything? What did he do? Okay. Well, we'll see if anything answers, we'll see if we come up with any answers. But so far, the guy in Izmir, though, didn't make it out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Well, how often? In a Chanami, right? In the Bayis Sheni, they were over 300 Kohanim Gedolim. Why did they die? We thought because of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But Rav says out of 100 people that die, 99 die from Ayin Harah, and one of them, the last guy, he killed himself. Whatever that means, he didn't eat well or something. Now, says Reb Chaim Falaji, says Rabbi Yosef Falaji, had it been up to me, I would warn Bezdin, I would advise Bezdin to warn every Rav not to let the Shliach Tzibur be the Baal Toikeya. Don't we know it says in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Mem Aleph, technically a father and son can get back-to-back aliyos, or two brothers, but ein manichin lo, we don't let. Why? Ayin Harah. So you would think, now the truth is the poskim are not so machmer on that. It's not the biggest deal in the world, especially Hagba Galila, and he brings poskim that say even a grandfather and a grandson. I don't think we're makbid on that, a grandfather and a grandson. And he brings proof from many poskim that ein manichin loy means we're goyerin by, we scream at such a practice, and we don't allow such a practice. We're meicha against such a practice. So we see even halacha entertains now, and it's not only achim and ha'av. Only by Yevamas do you need achim and ha'av. For Ayin Harah, you don't need achim and ha'av, even achim and ha'im. So the bottom line is, you don't want to have a family or a group of people draw too much attention to themselves, and certainly one person should not be the Baal Toikeya and the Baal Musaf. And then Rabbi Yosef Falaji says, I saw in the Sefer as Harah HaKodesh, that even someone who speaks publicly, when he's doiresh, he has to guard himself from Ayin Harah. I don't know, maybe you need like a screen in front of you with a camera, that's like a protector to, I don't know if that works. But when you're doiresh barabim, you should be concerned for Ayin Harah. Furthermore, says Reza Falaji, I would suggest that the reason why Minhag Yisrael is that when a Rav darshans, he wears a talis. Why is he wearing a talis? I was just at the Mar Sanach Pela. There was one of these Breslov guys, playing on one of these Simcha songs, and part of the getup was he was wearing a talis. So I said, well, why is he wearing a talis? It's part of the costume, right? But that guy, I understand why he wears a talis. I don't think if he wasn't wearing a talis, people wouldn't throw him a buck. The talis gives it more, makes it more legit. But what does the Rav have to wear? Now you say, what Rav wears a talis? The traditional minhag, Shabbos Hagadol, Shabbos Shuvah, the Rabbanim always wore a talis. When I think even today, many Rabbanim wear a talis, Shabbos Hagadol, Shabbos Shuvah. Remember, in the Aguda, Rav Pinchas Breuer used to wear a talis, Shabbos Hagadol, Shabbos Shuvah. So I guess nowadays, if you don't give such a good drasha, you don't have to worry about Ayin Harah. But that was what's the reason to wear the talis? Says Rabbi Yosef Falaji, it covers you. It protects you. This way people are not looking at you so much. Or you're covered in the talis. It's like a protective. And he says, well, what about the fact they're still, it's not like it's over your head with, you have two googly eyes. It's not like it's a Taliban, you're wearing a talis. They could still see you. So he brings a very interesting thing. He says that even if you're uncovered a little bit, in other words, people could see your face, people could see part of your body, Kabbalistically, the talis offers protection, that it protects you from Ayin Harah. He quotes the Zohar HaKadosh in Parshas Nasai. He quotes his father Reb Chaim Falaji in the Nefesh Chaim, that a talis creates an aura of, like a shield of Kedusha, that when you're in the talis, you're protected from Ayin Harah. So David's asking, so why this Baal Musaf Baal Toikeya, this multi-talented, he was l'chara wearing a talis. So I guess, it doesn't help completely. If you're really drawing attention to yourself, even the talis is not going to protect you. It's like, it's like when we drove to Hebron in a rock-proof vehicle. So rock-proof vehicle protects you from rocks, but it doesn't protect you from other things. So the talis protects you from certain kind of Ayin Harah, but other kinds of Ayin Harah, it ain't going to protect you from. So and then he says, and my brother, Rabbi Avram Falaji, he said, maybe you could use this for some Shabbat Brachas Torah. Yeah? He says, why? Ashkenazim don't do this, but by the Sfardim, by the Chuppah, the Chassan and Kala are under the talis. Why? What's the inyan of that? Because it's a public spectacle. Everybody is gawking at the Chassan and Kala. Everybody's staring. Everybody's watching. And it could be Ayin Harah. So therefore, when you're under the talis, you're protected from Ayin Harah. So I thought maybe, you ever realize in shul, anytime somebody's going to do something, okay, take out the Aron. I don't have a talis. Okay, so put on the talis. Hagba Galila, put on the talis. Mincha, well, why does the guy have to wear a talis for? It's the middle of the night. You're laying Megillas Esther, so it's in the Marav time. What are you wearing a talis for? So I thought it's covered Sibor. I mean, that is the simple reason, but it could be you do something publicly, you need extra shield from the Ayin Harah, you need extra protection, and therefore, perhaps, just like Rav Avram Falaji says that's the reason why the Chassan and Kala are shielded by the talis, maybe that's the reason why somebody does something publicly, they also put on a talis. So, thank you for reminding me. So we know that Yosef, Ayin Harah is not sholet on Yosef. Why? He was given the bracha to, Yosef is compared to the fish. V'yidgu laroiv b'karev ha'aretz. So fish are not subject to Ayin Harah because they're under the water. So Yosef is not subject to Ayin Harah. Also, he protected his mother, that Esav shouldn't gaze at his mother, so he's given the bracha alei ayin. Thank you for reminding me. So I would also like to suggest, luchos rishonais were broken because of Ayin Harah. So it was done very publicly, so they were broken. Luchos shniyos, they were not broken. Why? Because it was private. But still, it wasn't a full-fledged Kabbalah Torah. If you want a real good Kabbalah Torah, what month should you pick for Kabbalah Torah? Adar, because Adar is Mazal Adar, is Dagim. Dagim are not subject to Ayin Harah. So maybe that's why the Kabbalah Torah of Purim, which is in Chodesh Adar and is completely not subject to Ayin Harah, maybe that's why that Kabbalah Torah had Kiyum. In fact, we know that when there are two Adars, the opinion of Rabbeinu Ephraim and the Bnei Yissaschar and the Shar Yissaschar and Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz is that Adar Alep's mazel is Dagim and Adar Beis has no mazel whatsoever. There is no mazel from Adar Beis. That's why Hashem orchestrated it that Amalek, who came to attack Klal Yisrael on Adar Beis, they were experts in Kishav. Hashem had them come attack in Adar Beis because Adar Beis has no mazel and therefore we were protected. So it could be Adar Beis also is not subject to Ayin Harah. So therefore the Kabbalah HaTorah of Adar Beis of Purim was Niskayim. Okay.
So the thing for Yosef only worked for Yosef, not for Bnei Yisrael?
We're going to see. Parshas, yeah. If you come from Yosef, you're protected from Ayin Harah. If you don't come from Yosef, beware. Okay? Now, Reb Chaim Falaji, in the Sefer Nefesh Chaim, he starts off as follows. He says, from the Zohar, number 3, in Parshas Vayakel, and he quotes others that Ayin Harah is not shoyleit b'makom kadosh. So you could say in the Beis HaMikdash, Ayin Harah is not shoyleit. And any avodas Hashem, there's no Ayin Harah. And he quotes Abar Benel, Parshas Sisa, Parshas Bamidbar. The luchos were broken. That's the $1 million question. So we see that Ayin Harah is shoyleit in Davar Kedusha. Ayin Harah is shoyleit in a Makam Kadosh. So he says, yeah, in general, it's not shoyleit b'Makam Kadosh. It's not shoyleit b'Inyane Kedusha. But that's only if the item is Kodesh Kadashim. But when Hashem gave the Torah was Kadosh, and Klal Yisrael would have added a level of Kedusha. But the problem was that Klal Yisrael sinned with the Egel. So once they sinned with the Egel, they're no longer preserved the Madrega of Kodesh Kadashim, and they're diminished and they're lowered, and therefore they now are subject to Ayin Harah. So in other words, essentially, inherently, Ayin Harah is not possible in Yonei Kedusha. But that's so long as that the person is observing the Kedusha properly. But as soon as a person sins, they now become culpable, they become liable, they're vulnerable to Ayin Harah, says Reb Chaim Falaji. So, had he stopped there, I would have said that if somebody is doing a davar shebekdusha and they're doing it properly and they're not being choite at all, so they have nothing to worry about. There's no inyan of Ayin Harah. It's only if a person sins, then they're vulnerable and they could be subject to Ayin Harah. But he quotes Rabbeinu Bechaye. Do you remember Yaakov Avinu? He was doing this whole mystical, supernatural experiment with the sheep, and he was trying to get spotted, speckled, striped sheep, and obviously it was miraculous. But he took a stick and he peeled it so that the sheep, when they got heated up, they would see the stick and conceive similar to the vision, the image of the stick. And Rabbi Bechai says, look, the whole thing was Nisim. What's Yaakov Avinu peeling sticks for? He says that Yaakov Avinu didn't want it to look like an open miracle because otherwise there's Ayin Harah. Right, the Gemara Megillah says, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, after they were saved from the fire, what happened to them? We don't hear from them again in the whole Tanakh. Why? They had to run away. Ayin Harah. They were the front page of the newspaper, and they had a skedaddle. That was the end of their careers, so to speak. So Yaakov Avinu didn't want to draw so much attention to himself, so he had to mask it in the guise of nature. By the way, Elisha told the Gehazi, he says, you're going to bring the kid to life now. don't say a word to anyone. Don't breathe a word to anyone. Somebody says Shalom Aleichem, just ignore them. And Gehazi wasn't careful, and he told somebody about it as Ayin Harah, and the kid didn't wake up. And the Rabbeinu Bechai gives an astounding example. I never read the pasuk this way. We've in the past spoke out Rashi and the Ibn Ezra. I didn't know this, Rabbeinu Bechai. We know that after Yehuda was born, Leah stopped having children. Vatamoid Mileda. She had Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and that was it. Says Rabbeinu Bechai, why? Because she said, Hapamoides Hashem. Whoa, na, thank you, Hashem. And people say, why are you thanking Hashem? Because there are 4 wives, each one's supposed to have 3. I had 4, I got more than my share. Everyone's, oh, really? You got more than your share? Leah's big news, everyone's talking about Leah. She's done. No more kids. Why? Because everyone's talking about her. So, because of that, she stopped the bracha. The bracha ceased. Even Yosef, that we mentioned, is not subject to Ayin Harah. Yehoshua ben Nun, who is a descendant of Yosef, in order for him not to be subject to Ayin Harah, he had to hide himself. And says Rabbeinu Bechai, what could be greater than Matan Torah itself? And yet, the luchais were broken because they were given publicly, they were given with pomp and ceremony, and therefore they were subject to Ayin Harah, as opposed to luchai shniyos, v'ish la yala imach, v'gam ish al yira b'chol hahar.
The Navi also lost his Hashem took away
The keys?
from the Navi, gave it to
Someone else. Okay. Says Reb Chaim Velashi, we see from here, even b'makam Kedusha, even a miracle, one should try to hide the manner with which one does it as much as possible. In other words, even though Reb Chaim Velashi starts off that Dvarim Sheba Kedusha and Makom Kadosh are not subject to Ayin Harah, and the only time it's subject to Ayin Harah is if you do an Aveiro, so now you're vulnerable. Nevertheless, whatever you could do to do it in the most modest, discreet, low-key fashion, you should try to do. So does that mean that I shouldn't make a chasana, or a bar mitzvah, or a shalach manas? That's the talk of the town that everyone's yapping about. Of course that's what it means. That's the most basic Jewish practice. The most basic minhag Yisrael is to do everything in bedarach tznios, in the most modest, discreet way, and that includes a person's masim tovim. So basically, where are we holding? Why in the world would anybody ever want to be a Baal Koreh, a Baal Tefillah, a Baal Toikeya, a Darshan, a speaker? Who needs Mali v'Latzara Zois? Here we're saying that a person should try to do things. I'll learn with a chavrusa, but that's it. 2 people already. It's too many eyes. Two extra eyes on me. What do I need that for? So let's conclude with the comments of Rabbi Vadia Yosef in the Sefer Anaf Eitz Avos. We just visited him last week in the Sanhedria cemetery. So went to the kever of Rabbi Vadia and the kever of Rabbi Ben Zion Abba Shaul. They were good friends. They're buried in the same cemetery. And all the way in the back was the kever of the Chalban, the mystical milkman of Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Anyway, says Rabbi Vadia that the Gemara B'Metzia darshans that God will remove all sickness from you. Rav says, where sickness? There's no sickness. Ze Ayin Harah. Rav l'shitase, Rav would go to the cemetery, and Baruch HaKodesh, he said, 99% of people die from Ayin Harah, 1% kill themselves. Okay, so you say, fine. Baruch Hashem, I don't have any enemies. Everybody loves me. And I don't have to worry about Ayin Harah. Says Rabbi Vadia, Ayin Harah is not only from enemies. You have more Ayin Harah from friends than from enemies. Even from Talmidei Chachamim, the Gemara Bracha says, Non Chesam Beis, Rav Papa, Rav Huna Bar Yeshua were going on the way, and they met Rabbi Chanina. So they saw him, they said, we want to make 2 blessings on you. We want to make the Bracha, Shechalak Mechachmasai Lireyav, and Shechianu. And he said to them, you tzaddikim, you're so holy, you're so smart, I'm going to make a 3rd bracha on you. that you're like 600,000 Jews, I'm going to make a third bracha, Chacham Harazim. So they said, are you so smart that you could see into our souls and know that we're equivalent to 600,000 Jews? They were like startled by his wisdom. They gave him one look, and he dropped dead. Now, they weren't trying to harm him. They were just amazed by what he did. And still, the fact that he drew this attention to himself was dangerous. Or the Gemara Baba Basra says, don't make a Sefer Torah longer than its circumference. And the Gemara talks about the length of the Sefer Torah should not be longer than the circumference. And the Gemara says, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov managed to write a Sefer Torah, and he got it exactly that the length was equal to the circumference, and the rabbis were amazed, and then he died. So basically we see that something that amazes people and brings so much attention, zeh problem. The Gemara says in Bava Metzia, you're not allowed to stand near your friend's field when it's standing in when it's in its standing grain, because you're going to be jealous and it's going to cause Ayin Harah. Rav Yehuda said to Ravin, don't buy a field near the city, people are going to look at it. But on the other hand, the halacha is, many Rishonim say, that if you don't care about Ayin Harah, it's not going to harm you. Man delay kapid loy kapdinan. If you don't care about it, it's not going to do anything to you. Therefore, says Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, even a darshan who speaks well, and it's fasayim, mesek fasayim, pe mapik margalis. You could have someone, he's like a master orator. Nevertheless, he should be concerned for Ayin Harah. And therefore he should do the following segula. The Gemara says in Brachas, Non Hey Amud Beis, you ready for the segula? Get your hands ready, stretch. You're going to need it's not so easy. You'll see. You have to manipulate watch this. Someone who enters the city, they don't know who he is. And he's going to get up, he's going to daven for the Amud, and they're going to, this is a Pavarati over here. He's going to blow the shofar, and the people are going to say, this is like, he's going to speak. In order to avoid Ayin Harah, take your right thumb. You ready, everyone? Follow me. Take your right thumb. Put it in your left hand. Okay? So you say that's easy. Then take your left thumb and put it in your right hand. Okay? You put your right thumb in your left hand, and then I guess you have to just like this. So your right hand is holding your left thumb, and your left thumb is holding your right hand. Like this. You ready? This is what you do. And you say as follows. Ani Daniel Yaakov Benito Shifra. You say your name and your mother's name. Mizara de Shel Yosef Aniba. I'm from the seed of Yosef. She'ein Ayin Harah Sheletes Bay. Shenemar Ben Peiras Yosef Ben Peiras Alei Ayin Karibe Alei Ayin. Says Rabbi Ovadia, don't be confident in yourself. You're getting up to lane, you're getting up to daven, you're getting up to speak. You take that right thumb, you take the left thumb, you put the right thumb in the left hand. Not so easy. And the left thumb in your right hand. Yeah, like this. Right thumb in the left hand, left thumb in the right hand. You hold your hands together, you say, I, Ploini, Ben Ploinis, Ben your mother, Ano Mizar Shel Yosef Kasina. But Rabbi Adler says, but the thing is, I'm from Shevet Yehuda. What do you mean I'm from Shevet Yosef? So the answer is, we know that everybody comes from Yosef, like the Pasuk says in Tehillim, Ga'alta Bizroya Amecha B'nei Yaakov V'Yosef Sela. So we're all from Yosef. So the question is, how are we all from Yosef? The answer is, Yaakov's our father, and Yosef bought us food. And the one who sustained you is the one who bore you. We're all considered the children of Yosef because Yosef sustained us in Egypt. Without him, we would not be... the Chidah says another pshat, because Yosef was the seed of Rachel, was the descendant of Rachel, but was in the womb of Leah. You know that story? he started out in the womb of Leah, and Dinah started out in the womb of Rachel, and then they got swapped. So Yosef is Rachel and Leah. So he's got both. And the Gemara even says in Brachos that Rabbi Yochanan was very handsome, and he would sit outside of the mikvah, so the women would come out, and they would look at him, and they would conceive beautiful children like Rabbi Yochanan. They said, Rabbi Yochanan, you're not worried about Ayin Harah? And he said, I'm not worried. Ani mizare shel Yosef basi. Says Rabbi Vadia, therefore, mi shechanan es HaKadosh Baruch Hu lashon limudim. If you're able to speak, v'yesh lo koyach hashba lezakas es harabim, and you have the ability to influence, or you have the ability to daven for the Amud, or you have the ability to blow the shofar, or you have the ability to do any mitzvah, ein l'himana mikach michshash ayin hara. You cannot refrain. You can't be a coward. Why? Shomer mitzvah lo yeda davara. If you do a mitzvah, nothing bad will happen to you. We just got through saying that it doesn't apply. Once you know it doesn't apply, it does apply. Lamaisa, it applies. You cannot refrain from doing it. Now, don't be arrogant about it. Don't say, I don't have to worry about Ayin Harah. No. You have to worry about Ayin Harah. And you have to do it anyway. And with the humility to know that it's dangerous. And therefore, as much as you can, do it in the most modest, discreet, low-key way without diminishing in any way the mitzvah. How you do that? That's a good question.
Where does the practice of a red pen will come in? Where do they get that?
We don't do that.
People do.
No, you shouldn't.
How do they get that? Where do they come from?
My father asked Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, should you tell people, my father said, should I tell people it's Avodah Zarah? And Rabbi Yaakov said, so tell them it's worse. It's foolish. But that's not the subject of tonight's share. Anyway, says Rabbi Vad Yosef in the Sefer Pelayoyitz, he brings Ein la'adam lihimana milasois mitzvah kagayin lidrosh barabim nech shash ayin hara shomer mitzvah la'yeda davara u'mitzvah agune magna v'atzulei matzah. Now, maybe an important thought regarding this is as follows. I once heard from Avigdor Miller Zechat Tzaddik Livracha that the pasuk says "V'hatznei aleches im Hashem Elokecha." Be modest with God. It says the Gemara, what's an example of "V'hatznei aleches im Hashem Elokecha"? The Gemara gives two examples: Hachnasas kala and levayas hames. Here you have a poor kala. She couldn't pay for her wedding, so this great philanthropist, he footed the bill for the wedding. He paid $50,000 for this girl's wedding. And everybody knows. That's the example of Hatznei Aleches Im Hashem Elokecha. That's the most public thing you could possibly do. The other thing is burying the dead. I mean, this is a meis mitzvah. Nobody could bury the dead. The guy took the shovel. He carried the body in 90 degrees heat. He carried on his shoulder to the cemetery, buried the body, and they wrote up a story in the newspaper. What are the two examples of Hatznei Aleches Im Hashem Elokecha? Not some kind of hidden secret ma'isa. Two of the most public possible chasadim that people could know about. V'hatznei aleches im Hashem Elokecha. Says Rav Miller, of course that's Hatznei aleches im Hashem Elokecha, because the ikar mitzvah is not the performance of the mitzvah. The ikar mitzvah is what you're thinking at the time that you're doing the mitzvah. If you're thinking, everybody, watch me, look what I'm doing, I'm the greatest, aren't I magnanimous? Look how wonderful I am. Look how talented I am. So then, that's considered pomp and ceremony. But the opposite of Hatznei Aleches Im Hashem Elokecha is that the thoughts should be completely l'shem shamayim, not for any personal attention or aggrandizement. And in that case, even though you're doing the most public thing in the world, but b'machshavtoi, it's completely tsanua and discreet. So maybe that's also a oifen, that if a person performs the mitzvah with the proper mindset, the proper machshavos, despite the fact that it's public, it's still sort of protected, as the Gemara says, have a kibel v'kayam. Be humble and live. And the Gemara gives an example, a dark house, if you have a dark house, the kohen can't proclaim it that it's a bayis menuga, that it has tzaras. Let's say you have a house that's so dark and the only way to see the nega on the bayis is you have to open up the window it will never become tamei b'tzaras, because it has to be something you see with the natural eye without any exterior sources of light. So too, the Gemara says, if a person is humble and dark, then they live long without attracting attention. And we're saying that a dimension is, even if it's something which is public, but nevertheless, if in one's mind, one's kavana is not for any aggrandizement, that would be a way of, so to speak, protecting oneself. So the bottom line is, here we have the most important event in the history of the world, Matan Torah, and there was a problem. It was not niskayim. The luchos were broken. So apparently, as great and as important as it was done with too much pomp and ceremony. Nevertheless, Rabbi Vadia says that if a person has the opportunity to do the mitzvah, a person cannot refrain, despite the fact that it's public and there are a lot of people. So apparently, there is a way that a mitzvah could be done very publicly, and yet at the same time without the glamour, and that would be a way to make sure it's niskayim properly. And otherwise, make sure you're covered completely in your talis, and so when by the afraf, everyone thinks the chassan covers himself in the talis because he doesn't want to get hit by the candies. But also, he has a lot of attention. So especially after the aliyah, there's really a lot of eyes on him, so he covers himself. But be'ezras Hashem, if we follow the paradigm of luchai shniyos, then we could be confident that the Torah will be niskayim biyadenu. Have a wonderful night. Bracha v'atzlacha. Shkayach. Okay.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.